This line on the left is my brake reference point. It depends on the speed of my bike and how well I've come out of the last corner, whether I need to brake before it or on it. I brake in a straight line until now, and I continue on full brakes at an angle toward the corner. Around now, when I've judged the speed is correct, I release the brake and enter the turn with a closed throttle, focusing on getting the bike to turn. At this point, I gently crack the throttle and keep the bike turning. I need to get a good exit out of turn 1, but the track camber is not really helping, and I'm at a big lean angle, so I have to be careful with the acceleration. Now I'm off the edge of the rear tyre. I use as much throttle as I can and keep my body weight forward in order to stop the front lifting. This next section is one of the important keys to this circuit. If you brake in a straight line for too long, you will make the corner longer. I brake in a straight line until now, and then I start braking at an angle toward the corner. I don't aim at the paint on the inside. If I do, it throws me wide on the exit, so I aim at about 1.5 meters out. Releasing the brake about now, I crack the throttle here, but so gently I can still get the bike back to the paint for the exit. The most common mistake I see is people try to go too fast, too soon, they run wide and destroy the whole next section. Now that I'm back to the paint on the right, I've lined up a straight line between the two turns. Not only is this safer to accelerate hard and win time, you actually have more time with the bike upright, so it's easier to change gears. While I was leaned over through that last left-hander, I had to be a little careful on the throttle, but now it's up off the edge of the rear tyre, I accelerate as hard as I can. Unless there's any chance of it being damp, I get up on the paint in order to give me an easier angle of entry to the next turn. I see a lot of riders close the throttle here before they lean over for the turn. I don't. I stay on the throttle as late as I can in order to propel me at the corner. In doing this, I carry so much speed entering the turn that I need to close the throttle, and this takes advantage of the bike on full lean with a closed throttle turning as well as it possibly can. I don't use the brakes entering this turn. I crack the throttle about now, but I focus on keeping the bike turning, waiting for the exit. Just a side note here, it takes some bravery to go in fast enough to need to close the throttle, and you need good tyres, but at least you know what the goal is. About now I start to accelerate. This acceleration pushes me wide, but I never stop turning left in order to get back to the left side as early as possible. Now I'm back to the left side of the track early. It allows me to carry more speed in because I have the correct angle of entry. Again, I don't aim at the paint on the inside. I aim 1 meter or 2 out. I have to keep pushing myself into this turn because it's surprising how late it's possible to brake. I'm back on the throttle about now, but I focus on getting the bike turned and back to the paint. Remember, the exits onto the longer straights are the most important. Because this exit is blind, it's very difficult to find a reference point to exit toward. So, as well as looking, I count how long I'm at the paint on the right. I count 1, 2, 3, go, or 1, 2, go, and I exit toward the outside, and once I've got it right, I use that same timing and replicate it. Getting back to the paint on the right now helps reduce the risk on the upcoming off-camber exit. From here, I use the sign across the track as my brake reference point. This gives me confidence to stay on full throttle until I'm closer. I'm on full brakes in a straight line until now, and at this point I start braking towards the corner, but still on full brakes. Just like turn 2, I'm aiming at around 1.5 meters out from the paint on the inside. Around now, when I've judged the speed is right, I release the brakes and use the last part of the lean. Next is a short period of closed throttle full lean. Now I crack the throttle, but it's super important to keep the bike turning back to the inside. I would say 9 out of 10 people I work with use too much throttle here, running wide, destroying the whole next section. I'm back to the paint and I've lined up the next section. From here, I not only focus on the exit, I focus on not letting the bike run wide. By not letting the bike run too wide, I'm going to get the bike back to the right hand side earlier, lining up the next angle of entry. I aim at getting the bike back to the right at the beginning of the paint here. I don't use the brakes on the entry of this next turn, I trust the front. I stay on the throttle till about halfway across the track, propelling the bike at the turn. This closed throttle entry takes some building up to, but that's what you need to do to go fast. After a short period of closed throttle full lean, I crack the throttle in preparation to go. Now I know that I'm not going to run off the circuit on the outside, I get back on the throttle. I get up on the paint here to get an easier angle of entry into the next corner. I don't brake in a straight line here, I brake toward the corner. Once again, I'm aiming at about 1.5 meters out. Now that I'm back to the paint, I'm looking at the last white block, which is my go point. In order to get the correct angle of entry into the next corner, I make sure I don't run too wide here, around mid-track. Now I'm aiming at the beginning of the paint on the left-hand side. By getting back to the left-hand side early, on full brakes I have a moment to settle the bike before turning in. Now I release the brake, get to full lean and enter with a closed throttle. I crack the throttle quite early on this corner because I want to run wide in order to get a better angle of entry into the next turn. The exit of the next turn is extremely important because it has a long straight after it. So I want to get the majority of the turning done before I get to the paint on the right hand side. In order to do that, I need to stay on the throttle now as long as I can and turn in as late as I can, still making it back to the paint on the right. The last piece of the puzzle to get this next turn right is entering with a closed throttle. Now I crack the throttle in preparation to go. It depends on your speed and the speed of your bike whether you need brakes on the approach of the next turn. I do, and knowing that I'm going to use brakes gives me confidence right now to use more throttle and for longer. On the paint to open up the corner, I dab the brake to scrub off that extra speed I've built on the throttle and push on the inside bar to make the bike turn in. The extra weight on the front from the brakes allows you to push more force on the handlebars, making this all happen faster. It's only a short time on the brake and I release it by the time I get to half lean. Nice and close to the paint, I now get back on the throttle to not only win time but to push me wide and give me a better angle of entry into the next turn. From here, I reduce the throttle to make the bike turn in better. My aim is to start accelerating from the next apex because it leads on to another straight. Now, while on full throttle, I'm looking at the paint on the right because I want to be back there in time for my brake reference point at 100 meters. This corner is another important key to the track and probably the most difficult. I want to go in fast and out fast. I'm actually quite slow in the middle. The first step is braking at an angle to around here. Now I release the brake, get it to full lean, entering on a closed throttle. Then I'll crack the throttle, but continue to focus on getting it back to the paint for the exit. Now I'm back to the paint on the inside. The majority of the turn is done. I get it up off the edge of the rear tyre and accelerate towards the end of the grandstand. Now, like every time I'm on the throttle, I think about where to position the bike for the best angle of entry into the next corner.